In this video, I travel 2,684 kilometers, or 1,700 miles, to hunt Manitoba spring bears. Family dropped me off at 4:30 in the morning. I flew into North Dakota and was picked up by friend of Bunjie, Gary, also known as Old Grumpy Hunter.
My chauffeur, Old Grumpy Hunter.
He was going on this trip with me. We had been planning it over the many months leading up to that trip.
Well, we got through the border without having to totally empty the truck.
So we pull into customs as we're going across the Canadian border, and they ask, do you have any firearms? And Gary says,
He said, no, I left them all home.
well, do you normally carry firearms? Oh yeah, tons of them. Lots of them.
I didn't say
all of them.
We crossed the border without too much hassle, but it wasn't too bad. But once we got to Winnipeg, we spent the night in a hotel there. And the next morning when we got up, we realized, hey, all of a sudden something's not right. Just like last summer, we had those wildfires in Canada that brought all that smoke down to the northeastern United States where I live. It was back. It was the same kind of thing. I walked outside and you could smell the smoke. The sun gave off that familiar glow. It was a little bit different, right? And that really starts working with my allergies. I don't think I fully recovered from that, from being exposed to that for that period of time.
Oh, that's not snow.
Canada doesn't have Dunkin' Donuts. I didn't know that. I wasn't told that before I went on this trip.
Oh, Canada. I had my Tim Hortons iced coffee this morning. We're back on the road. Wildfires up north of us, bringing the smoke down. Hopefully, this doesn't bother the bears too much. They should be habituated to this kind of thing, I'm thinking, so probably going to be all right.
And it should help cover our scent.
What are you saying?
That they won't be able to smell us.
All part of the adventure.
To give you an idea how much farther north I am, 600 miles north of where I live in northeastern Pennsylvania. That's where Lake Manitoba, the region that we're going to be hunting, is. It's so much farther north, there's an extra hour and a half of daylight up here this time of year. For that reason, we're hunting afternoons, you hunt evenings, but that means it doesn't really get dark until 10 o'clock, 10:30. The bush is what they refer to the woods in Manitoba area as, okay, up here where we're hunting. It is a mix of poplar and scrub oak and trees like that. It's not a lot of big trees, not a lot of heavy, tall trees. There's a lot of pine trees, that sort of thing too, but they don't really get real big. But it goes on for miles and miles and miles. One of the first things I notice when we're in that area is that they're clearing a lot of that bush for farmland. And it's becoming apparent that, just like everywhere else in the world, our hunting habitat is shrinking somewhat. First night in the stand, I am very excited. I really don't know what to expect. I've never hunted Canada before. Been to Canada a few times for fishing, that sort of thing. But, I've watched a lot of videos on hunting in Canada, but I've never really been there with a crossbow to hunt or anything like that. Don't know what to expect. The bush is new to me, and I'm introduced to my stand for the first night, and I sat in some pretty skinny trees before. This one is pretty skinny and pretty much out in the open. And then when I look out in the woods, there's popple trees blown down left and right. What makes this tree better than those trees? I look around, we've got the barrels. We've got a blue barrel. Death by Bunjie, we like the blue barrels. Blue is the color for barrels. There's a reason for that. You want a blue barrel so that as it gets darker, as those big bears start coming in, you can see them better against the silhouette of that blue barrel. A black bear at dusk is going to be hard to really make out perfectly. So we do want every little bit of help that we can get. A light colored barrel, a bright barrel like a blue barrel is very much helpful in that, I think. The other thing I noticed at this location is There's some scat on the ground. There's some good prints on the ground. There is bear sign everywhere around this barrel. So I know there is activity. I know that I can expect to see a bear or two while I'm sitting in this stand. Speaking of the stand, this is a pretty small stand. You people who are friends of Bunjie, you know that I prefer a two-man ladder stand. That is crossbow hunting perfection for me. But I'll hunt in a one-man stand. And I did have my harness, right? I'm not known for wearing a safety harness, but I try to set a good example for my daughter. And on this trip, 100%, I'll be wearing a safety harness in the stand. I get all buckled in, I get set up in the tree, and one of the first things I notice off to the left of me is the tree next to me has some claw marks in it, right? Where a small bear apparently has climbed to get away from a bigger bear, probably. That's something that commonly happens around these bait sites. And that's a little close, right? That tree is 6-8 feet away from me off to my left. I didn't realize this at the time, but right behind me, in the tree that I'm in, there are claw marks. I mean, so apparently a bear had saw fit to climb that tree as well. There's lots of bears here, right? This is a thing. So it's just something that you kind of, I don't know what to expect on this trip. I don't know. Am I going to get attacked? I don't know. You know, you don't hear about that an awful lot, but I know that it is a possibility, and it does make you a little more anxious, let's say. The barrel had been freshened that morning by the guide. He tells me they'd stood it up and loaded it up and all that good stuff, and nothing had been in there to disturb that barrel. That tells me we're ready for action. Now, the enforcer and I, we're there with one purpose, and that is to protect that barrel. Despite the small stand, I'm excited, I am comfortable, I am strapped in, I feel completely safe. The enforcer gently resting across my lap, ready to be lifted and aimed at any opportunity. And I have my backpack wired onto the stand, so that's not going anywhere. I'm doing pretty good, right? I feel pretty comfortable. Before I know it, out in the bush, now, the leaves are not fully out on the trees. They're just starting the week that I'm there. They're just starting to come out. And you can see that they're a little bit of green, but you can see quite a distance through the bush. A black bear is going to stand out pretty good coming through the bush. So I look off to my right, and before I know it, I can see a bear moving through the bush. Now, this is exciting. If you remember back in the history of Death by Bunjie, I spent 2 trips going to Maine to kill black bears. And on 2 separate trips, it took me 9 sits to see a black bear. This one. And Bunjie and I, the original Bunjie hanging on the wall behind me, we killed that bear. This bear appears to be very nervous. And at first I'm thinking, oh, he's looking to see if anybody's in the tree stand. I don't think that's really what his concern is. I think he's more concerned about other bears than he is about the potential for hunters being there, right? May not be very educated about tree stands and hunters and that sort of thing, but he's definitely been educated about bears, because he walks back and forth on one fallen tree, gets on another fallen tree, and weaves his way in toward the barrel, very cautious, looking in that direction to try and see if anybody else is already there. Eventually he makes his way into the barrel, and I have the show of a lifetime. I get to watch in person a beautiful black bear, a young black bear, probably weighs 120, 130 pounds, something like that, feeding at that barrel, knocking it over, making a racket, messing around a little bit, eating, and just having a good time. I'm sitting there only 15 yards away from this, watching it happen. The barrel is exactly 14 yards. Now, the enforcer and we got no problem with longer shots. Really like closer shots too, but it's a little tight, you know, when you got bears that close to you. He's feeding for a little bit, having a good time. Eventually, after giving me a show for a period of time, he makes his way off. And I have a little bit of regret. Now, this bear is essentially a little bit smaller, or maybe the same size as the bear that I've already killed. And I do want to sort of step up a little bit. We're in Manitoba, right? We're in a place with a lot of bear activity. And I'm hoping to get a shot at a bigger bear. Should I have shot this bear? It was alone. It was probably a young male. Would have made a nice rug. Fill a tag on the first night. You can't ask for more than that. Nonetheless, I'm sitting as still as possible, trying not to move, trying not to disturb the scene or let anybody know that I'm there. I don't have too much regret for too long because I start hearing something behind me. I have some huffing coming in behind me. Somebody's huffing as they're coming in. You know, so I'm waiting to see what this is, and I'm trying not to move too much, and I look over my left shoulder and I can see a black bear coming in with a younger black bear. Now, at first I'm thinking this is a mother and a cub, right? Last year's cub, not a fresh cub from this year, but an older cub. The cub is a cinnamon bear. Holy cow, in person, I have never seen a cinnamon bear. That's pretty exciting. Bears this time of year, a black bear like this is going to be kicking those cubs off right about now because they go into their rut. They start getting ready to have babies the next year. So if this is a sow, she's probably close to getting rid of this cub right about now. These bears feed in front of me for 45 minutes. At one point, they're wondering about other bears coming in. And if you read body language of animals, which I try to do, I'm not that good with bears. This is my third bear hunt ever. I'm learning more about that. But, you know, as they're looking around, that tells me there's other bears in the area. This bear comes up past the second ring on the barrel, not to the top of the barrel, but it is a solid bear. I'm judging this bear to be around 250 pounds. The problem is there's 3 bears in front of me. How are you going to take a shot when you got 3 bears in front of you? I don't want to hit the bear behind this one. I don't want the other one to suddenly stand up in the process of the shot and take an arrow. You got to be careful and let them separate a little bit. Finally, when this bear is turning, it looks as though it might move away from the barrels. I get ready and I take that shot. Good solid broadside shot, goes through right where I want it. The bears run off to my right. I watch them go. I see where they head.
We're going to see how that went. I sat and watched these bears for a long time. Beautiful big black bear. Had a little bit of white on its chest. Exactly what I came to Manitoba for. I had to fit one in there because there were 4 bears. 3 color phase. I'm going to get down carefully. Bears all over here. Fingers crossed.
Now I get down and look at that arrow just because I can't sit there and not look at the arrow, right? So I go look at the arrow.
All right. Here is my arrow. And that looks pretty good if you ask me. That is what we expect it to look like.
The arrow looks perfect. It buries itself in the dirt on the other side of that bear, something that we had not accomplished in Maine. We had a heavier arrow in Maine, heavier than what I'm using today, but on the old slow Bunjie. And in that one, the bear ran off with the arrow, right? In this case, the arrow gets a perfect pass through on a bear that probably weighs close to twice what this bear weighs. So I'm very excited about the equipment performing, and my next video will be about that equipment. Nonetheless, I am not going to track this bear. There's other bears around. So I decide to get my gear set up right at the bottom of the tree stand, and I climb back in the tree stand, and I am set to enjoy the show. As darkness sets in, I can see lights in the distance with the 4x4 coming to pick me up. The guide comes, I tell him more details about what happened and how it went, and that the bear's laying out there 40, 50 yards away, and he decides to come back in the morning. I'm not going to second guess my guide on that. Coming back in the morning, not a problem. No reason for us to go and risk ourselves, go out there into the bush with bears around, especially this time of night. That's when all the bears are coming to a barrel like this. So we get back in the 4x4 and we head out. Now the temperatures here are getting down to freezing, so that's not going to be a problem. This bear will sit overnight just fine. In the morning, we come back all freshened up and we look for that bear. We have a great trail of blood to follow. The 3-inch SWAT hacker does just fine on this bear. That opened up perfectly. We've got a blood trail to prove it, and it isn't long before we find our bear. My guide estimates the weight of this bear to be between 250 and 300 pounds, and I'm very excited about that. It is a big bear by this Pennsylvania boy's standards. Very excited about that. If we go back to Manitoba, maybe we'll shoot a bigger bear. Who knows? But this bear is a trophy of a lifetime for me. This bear is a fighter. An eye that is injured and looks like she may have been blind in that eye. Long teeth, scars, and a cut ear, a split ear. This is a bear that has been a survivor. And for me, I feel like that's kind of what I am as a bear hunter. There's a lot that goes into a hunt like this. There really is, and I'll talk about that in future videos. For now, it is just great to be home. Until next time, all hail Bunjie.